Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Worden, and as always, with the legendary Andy Jones-Wilkins. Andy, it's Black Canyon season.
Great to be here, Chris, and good to be back on another preview show. We got a hot Black Canyon coming at us.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny that you mention it being hot because one of the amazing things about this race, I've competed in it 4 times. I have four finishes between 16 and 17 hours, basically the golden hour for Western states. So if there's anybody that knows how to get the race done, maybe not in a pretty way, but get my money's worth, I'll raise my hand to that. The thing about this race is that you never know what the weather is going to bring in February in Arizona. It has been unseasonably cold this year for us here in the desert, and I've run that race in conditions that were sideways rain in the 40s and 6 inches of water for large portions of the course, had multiple reroutes. In the 4 times I've finished the race, I've finished at 3 different finish lines. So there's a lot going on with the Black Canyon course.
How's the weather look this year? Have you taken a peek yet?
I've taken multiple peeks, and I still don't know. It seems like we're looking at highs approaching 70, maybe around Black Canyon City or so. The start of the race is going to be around 30 to 35 degrees for most runners. There are 3 wave starts for those that aren't familiar. The first wave will be at 7 a.m., the second will be at 7:30, and the third will be at 8. Most of the elites and top runners will be in that first wave, but there are some non-elites in there as well. I believe that some runners got their request of first wave. For instance, there are people that are doing the 100K on Saturday and the 60K on Sunday. I think it was fair to, even if they're back of the packers, to give them that extra hour in between the 2 races because their turnaround is going to be ridiculous. They have 20 hours to finish the race, and if you're not, an elite runner, there's 17 hours for the Western States lottery ticket. So there's a possibility that you might get done at midnight or 1 and then have to turn around and start again at 7 in the morning.
So good for them for taking that extra hour.
I believe that I believe that I believe there are actually about 25 or 30 people undertaking the double this weekend.
Yeah.
So my hat's off to you. I know some of you personally, and I think you're all nuts. But,
Right.
But talking about the Black Canyon 100K course, I believe that it is got to be one of the fastest courses in the circuit as far as major races go. It's not like flat. It's a net downhill. That doesn't mean it's not tricky. It's got some sections where you do have climbing, and almost all of the climbing is in the second half of the race. The first half of the race, you're coming out of Mayer High School. You run through town on paved roads. Then you make the shift to dirt roads. And after about 2.5, 3 miles, you actually hit the Black Canyon single track trail. And from there, it rolls a little bit for the first, I would say, the next 5-6 miles, perhaps. And then when you get to Antelope Mesa, the very first aid station, it becomes this downhill, smooth, wonderful running course that ducks in and out of canyon sections. And it's great because you might see somebody who looks like maybe like in a straight line, they might be 100 feet away from you, but because of the way that the course meanders through the canyons, they could be a quarter mile ahead of you. And you get to see like a lot of, back and forth through the Black Canyon Trail. From there all the way to Bumblebee, it starts to get a little bit more rugged, not difficult, but
And Bumblebee sits right around mile 20, right?
Yes, Bumblebee.
And so that's a long. I mean, what are some of those front runners? The True Heart Brown last year. What was he running, or Scott Trayer? What were they running? Were they sub 7s or?
Oh, I would believe so.
Yeah,
I have found myself in that section between Antelope Mesa and Hidden Treasure, doing a 8:30 pace. For me to be going that fast means that they're probably pushing 6:30 or faster in that section. Things just tick off so quickly as you're heading down there.
There is the potential that you could trash your quads there.
Well, here's the thing. You can trash more than your quads. You can trash your whole day, and I've seen it happen. Runners either in the front of the pack, the back of the pack, they go out hot to Bumblebee. I've had friends who have gotten to Bumblebee 30 to 45 minutes before me that finished an hour or more behind me when all was said and done because they just burnt themselves out. I mean, they're feeling great when they get to Bumblebee. Mile 20, well, then, it kind of levels out. And then, it gets a little bit more rugged about Soap Creek, about the 50K mark. And
before that, note our good friend of Aravaipa, Chris Thornley with Squirrel's Nut Butter, long aid station, captain and host at Bumblebee. Yep. His brother Craig will be up there. I spoke to him yesterday. He'll be up there as well before coming down to the finish line to deliver the golden ticket. So Bumblebee should be a festive and exciting place at the end of that screaming downhill.
Absolutely. Actually, Bumblebee was the first place I met Chris Thornley several years ago. Ironically, I dropped at the next aid station due to chafing. And what's funny is that when I got there, I just was like mentally not there. And I get to the aid station at mile 24 and at Gloriana. And Chris, I was at the back of the pack of the 60K that day. And Chris had already moved over to Gloriana to kind of touch base with them because it's just right down the road from one another. And when I said I was dropping because I've got too much chafing, Chris is like, well, I have something that might help you. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm done. Well, now I'm a complete devotee of Squirrel's Nut Butter. Chris Thornley and I met, actually on this race course.
Fantastic. So then from Bumblebee to Black Canyon City, you got 17 miles.
Yeah, and that's where things get interesting in the second half of that 17 miles because you head right down into the depths of the canyon, and I don't know what the water levels are like. It sounds like there is water on the course. So you're going to have a couple of water crossings, one or two probably, I think, before you hit Black Canyon City.
And they're not, you can skip rocks. Your feet are going to get wet.
You can try, maybe, but I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah.
Just pull through it. If you're really that concerned about it, bring a change of socks for Black Canyon City because you don't hit water before the halfway point. So if you can change your socks at mile 38 at Black Canyon City, that should be just fine. But here's the thing. You climb out of the canyon to Black Canyon City aid station, and it's a huge aid station, and you're actually literally right next to Rock Springs Cafe right there. And then you head right
Which is, of course, right next to the interstate that could take you right back to your hotel room.
Totally, if you're getting those feels. So you have to be careful.
Right.
But the thing is that as soon as you leave Black Canyon City, you head right back down into the canyon and have a water crossing maybe a mile and a half out. And that one's unavoidable. And it's worse as the day goes on because you actually have a little bit of a steep bank on the south side of the river or wash or whatever where, I've genuinely had to crawl on hands and knees,
really?
Grabbing. Well, it gets muddy through all.
It's like sandy, muddy, silty.
It's pure mud,
Yeah.
and what happens is if you're a back of the packer like me, it's not going to affect the front runners, very much at all. But by the time that 500, 600, 700 runners have already hit that portion of the course, it's rough on those of us.
Yeah.
I'm covered in mud by the time I get through there. And then that begins the long climb on the course, at least one of the two long climbs. And it doesn't stop climbing until you hit Cottonwood Aid at mile 47. Then you head down from Cottonwood into another water crossing right before Table Mesa. And that's the final water crossing of the course under normal circumstances. I don't think that there's water in the course after that ever. But Table Mesa at mile 51 is...
And then you've got one more.
Yeah. And you can see
pretty beastly climb, especially for Black Canyon, right?
Yeah. You can see the headlamps kind of moving left to right up the hill, as it were. And if you're at the back of the pack, and I'm speaking from my experience.
chasing that lottery ticket, that
That's
17-hour
true.
finish. Which, by the way, we should get it in there. We're going to be covering the golden hour
Absolutely.
Of the race back on the live stream in the middle of the night from the finish line. So it's exciting. But folks who are interested in hearing about and seeing folks finish in that 17-hour range, Chris and I will be out there, and it should be a lot of fun. We haven't done it before. We'll see. Well, the static cam will be up all along in the finish line, but we'll do a little commentary there between 11 and 1 Mountain Standard Time overnight. So, I mean, you're right. At that point, there's a lot of headlamps. There's that second night. There's the potential of the cold. There's that one more beastly climb. And then you crest that climb, and are you home free?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. You hit the final aid station with about 3.5 miles to go, Doe Spring. And after that, it's pretty flat, and you can actually see the finish line from a couple miles away in the dark. Yeah, it's one of those moments. So and for me, like, because I always ran it, when there was a single wave at 7 a.m., I was chasing midnight. It was like Cinderella. Right. And I've finished it in 1654, 1657, 1611, and 1649. So each time, like, there have been years where I was the final person to make it under 17 hours. And you could, first of all, you can see them from 2 miles away. And then as you're, getting closer, like in the last half mile, quarter mile, you can hear them and just feel the energy. Like they, especially because I have cut it so close, they are like screaming at me to get in, because they know that seconds matter, and you think about, in a race
and
like
17:01 would be heartbreaking.
Oh yeah. I've had friends that have finished just after 17, and it is, you're gutted for them, but we will be covering the chase for those lottery tickets. We'll pop back on the air in the wee hours of Saturday night into Sunday morning, but today we're here to talk about the Golden Ticket race, and there are some amazing athletes. We say this every time, but this time we mean it even more. Yeah. Looking at this field, I guess we can start with the women's field first, but on either side, it's another one of those situations where we could potentially see, a number of runners come away with golden tickets, and another set of runners that wouldn't be surprising if they did, sneak into a golden ticket situation. But, we might not even mention them today. That's how many high-level athletes there are. So I guess if we wanted to just dive right in, I've got my notes, you've got your notes, but I guess looking at the women's field, I think that the first name that we should probably, or actually let's talk about the first and foremost, even though it is a golden ticket race, the people who are not chasing golden tickets.
I wanted to start with that because I think it's an interesting dynamic, and it says something actually about the stature of Black Canyon as a race, that there are people coming here to run, potentially to win, who already are in Western states.
Yep.
Or have already declined their spot in Western states. And there's 3 of them in the women's race. There's Heather Jackson, who has a sponsor spot through Hoka. There's Casey Lichtai, who has a race admin spot at Western states. And there's Elsa McDonald, who finished at second place at Western states last year and declined her top 10 spot because she's focusing on other things. She's a well-known runner down here in Arizona.
Yeah, she's won this race.
She spends a lot of time down here in Arizona. She's won this race. So that's an interesting dynamic, right? Let's just say Heather, Elsa, and Casey finish 1, 2, 3.
Wouldn't surprise
the
me.
golden tickets are going to be 4th and 5th. So I mean, I think that's an interesting dynamic. That would take a lot of sort of checkers to line up. But I think it's interesting to note that. And then that's the 3 on the women's side that I think are in that category. There's only 1 on the men's side, Tom Evans, who finished 3rd at UTMB, which is the most competitive golden ticket race.
Yeah.
But I think we're talking about Black Canyon being right up there as potentially the second most competitive
of the sub hundreds.
Of the sub 100 golden ticket races. Yeah. So I feel as though that dynamic is an interesting one. Looking quickly at the women's field, there are some question marks. Right out of the gate, Ida Nielsen. Ida, if you just put her side by side against just about anybody in this field, would be the prohibitive favorite. But there's a little rumbling. I went and poked around on Strava. She's been skiing a lot, that she might not be 100%. Ida, I wouldn't bet against Ida for a second, but I think that'll be an interesting story, particularly in that first 20 miles between the start and Bumblebee. Maybe she's working on some kind of injury, and if she gets to mile 20 and it's sort of like, well, I guess it's okay. It could be game on, or it could be like live to fight another day. So that's an interesting question mark number 1. Question mark number 2, Keely Henninger, wonderful story. Got a golden ticket entry way back at Lake Sonoma. declined it because she felt like she wasn't ready for Western States, got another one, got to Western States in 2022, and got hit with a bad ankle injury and ended up having to drop out.
Well, she's also had a top 10 finish at Western States.
Oh, she certainly has had a top 10 finish at Western States, but she has that fire to come back, and we'll see, hearing your course description, and I'm curious about this, if you're coming in on and I'm not saying Keely has a gimpy ankle, she's smart, she's probably 100%, but is Black Canyon the kind of course that you'd be worried about a gimpy ankle, or is it relatively smooth where you could, with exception of few places, might be able to get away with a gimpy ankle?
It's very runnable. Last year, Jeff Colt apparently ran the second half in road flats, which I found surprising because I would think that you'd run the road flats in the first part, like up to Black Canyon City, you could probably get away with it. In the second half, I feel like it's more chunky. It's not like you're bouldering or anything like that at any stretch, but coming out of the first road crossing after water crossing at Black Canyon City.
Water, road.
Yeah, you got to watch out on both of them. But you find yourself in a kind of just a bunch of nuggets basically serve as the trail for a couple miles as you climb up. So
there could be, if Keely is favoring her ankle, it could be an issue. So a couple, the Ida Nielsen story, the Keely story, and then late entry into the race, Alexi Pappas, Matt Feldake's favorite.
Yes.
Win the whole, Greek-American 2016 Olympian.
Yes. Alexi, it was basically an 11th hour entry. It was in the last couple days where somebody else happened to notice her name pop up. And that's one of the fun things about monitoring ultra sign up as these races draw near, is that there's no hiding for these pro athletes. They eventually have to, say, when they're coming in. Alexi is interesting to me because she obviously has the fitness and capability, but she doesn't have the resume. And I feel like in a race like this, on a course like this, with a field such as this, that experience matters. Now, she had a fine showing at Bandera, which also raises another question. She finished 12th, but she was about 2 hours off the podium at Bandera. So what is her turnaround going to be like on, Bandera was just, a couple of weeks ago. So is she capable of running back-to-back 100Ks at a high level? Because this field is as strong as Bandera's was.
Arguably stronger, yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I was going to talk about, with some of the people who already have their tickets, and interesting that I didn't even think about the fact that they could cause this ticket to push down to 4 or 5. I mean, Allison McDonald is, and I'm going to fully credit Single Track and Finn and Brett and Leah on this, but I was there, so I also knew that it happened. But Elsa is the last person to beat Courtney Dauwalter in a trail race that Courtney didn't drop.
Yeah.
That was Black Canyon here. So, she's won this race. Casey's won this race. Yeah. Heather Jackson, I think, is a different case, and I was talking with a couple of elites simply because her newness to the sport and her entry into Western States has people kind of, raising an eyebrow. I feel like she has to show out here regardless. She's got to finish in those top couple spots to show not that she's capable, because we know she's capable, but that she belongs. The thing is that at Javelina, she was torching that course for 60 miles.
Right.
Well, that's what this course is. It's 60 miles. I think it was more of a lesson learned for her once it got past 60 miles at Javelina. But she showed that she belongs and that she's capable.
I absolutely agree, and I think Heather knows that.
Yes.
She comes
Eyes
from
around her.
She comes from the Ironman background. She knows there's no free lunch. Yes, she has a Hoka spot. She earned that. Mm-hmm. She could have declined it and said, no, I want to get it at Black Canyon. But she knows, with very limited ultra experience, that coming here and having a good performance not only is going to be a great training effort for her going into Western States, but it's going to potentially legitimize her in the eyes of perhaps the critics who might, I'm not one, but in the critics who might be like, she got a free pass. And by the way, she ran those first 3 loops of Javelina like no woman has in the history of the race.
Yeah.
Yes, she faded in the end, but I'd be hard pressed to find somebody who's going to be willing to like go with her.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it Javelina. No one really went with her, and then she came back, and then Devin just crushed. So, and as did Nicole Bitter. So I think just talking about the dynamics for a second, I think Heather's going to go. Alexi may go. A note, by the way, on Alexi, her only other ultra is Avalon Benefit 50K, which is out on Catalina Island off the coast of LA, which has a lot of long, gradual ups and downs and a lot of like really hard packed dirt road and trail. That's kind of like the way you're talking about at least the first half of this course. So I think if she can keep it reined in, she'll be better off than going with Heather, but she might not be able to control herself, and she may end up going with Heather.
Yeah, a couple other runners that I was, looking at, and you already mentioned two of them. Ida Nielsen, we'll talk about her a little bit later, I'm sure. Keely Henninger, in her. Here we go. All right. And we're back. We were talking about a group that I've got my picks kind of like bracketed into like different groups. And we were talking about Lottie Brinks, who had an excellent Javelin 100K in October. So, her fitness level has got to be up there. Again, another name. And so far we've named off like 6 or 7 names. Well, when you're talking about your top 5 for your free trail fantasy, well, we've already hit 7, and we've still got several more to go. What are your thoughts on Lottie and her chances in this race?
I think she's got a good shot. I put her in a similar category as Sarah Beal, the winner of JFK. Like she's got, good, raw, solid foot speed. Interesting kind of dynamic. It'll be interesting to see how she does, in the heat of what might be a little bit more competition than she's used to.
Okay. One of the things also, there is a local contingent, multiple Aravaipa racing team members, other people that we know and have gotten familiar with, all have like some semblance of notoriety locally or regionally. Like Georgia Porter, which has already been touched upon. Georgia's just had an unreal last 12 months. Vivian Camille Bobbitt, who was on the Bandera broadcast with multiple top 10 golden ticket finishes. So, she might not have like been on the podium or or won these races, but she's definitely been one of the first people to cross the finish line several times. Bree Grigsby, multiple, I believe 3 top 5 finishes in golden ticket races. So she's right there. Nicole Hansen, who is new to the Aravaipa racing team for this season, she finished 9th here last year, and she's been getting faster. I honestly believe that she ran her 9th place finish last year really kind of not realizing how good she is. She finished 6th at Mogollon Monster, leading most of that race for the first half. She came into Buck Springs at mile 45 alongside Pete Kostelnick.
Yeah.
She's, an amazing runner. Melissa Ostaszewski is now healthy, and she is, coming down from Flagstaff, and after some serious, health concerns as far as like, I believe some leg issues, but now she's up and ready to run again too. So we've got a local contingent that is also familiar with the area and familiar with the trails.
So of that batch, the one that pops up for me is Georgia Porter.
Absolutely.
Georgia Porter, Aravaipa Racing Team, course record at this past year's McDowell Mountain Frenzy, Run Rabbit Run 50 Mile, a win at Crown King. 15 minutes behind Ida Nelson's just incredible Crown King, which broke an Ann Trayson record, by the way, if you want to go back in the way back machine. Second here at the Black Canyon. 60K, former Olympic trials marathoner, blah, blah, blah. Never run 100K. Right, so there's always they're always there, right? There's always that first 100K. I think this is a chance for Georgia Porter to break out. She's coming onto the big stage. I think of that local, semi-local Aravaipa team group, keep your eye on Georgia Porter.
I agree. I think that Georgia is primed based on what she's done in recent races to be in the discussion for the entirety of the day, assuming everything holds together. That's not to discount Vivian or Bree or Melissa or Nicole. To be honest, I actually wrestled with whether or not to put Nicole in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
I've known her, better than most of them because I actually do train with her and a couple of, we're friends and we've got, she comes out to the group runs and everything like that. So I get to see how well she's doing. But yeah, I would not count out locals either from here or from Flagstaff or even from Tucson.
Well, I want to jump in on the buckets because in the overseas bucket, we've talked already a little bit about Ida Nielsen, but Ingvild Kaspersen popped up on my list. Overall winner at the Flagstaff Sky Peaks earlier this year or last year, but a 30th place at CCC. She is one of the contingent of Adidas Terex runners like Tom Evans and others who are here in Sedona the week leading up to this race. So she's here anyway. But I'll be curious to see how somebody from I believe she's from Norway, but we might have to fact check that. How Ingvild does, but it would be interesting. She's run here in Arizona before, and I'm intrigued by that story.
Speaking of the Adidas Terex team, we do have somebody in on that's going to be joining us on the live stream, I believe. I think that Corinne Malcolm is actually up there with them.
Corinne is very active in the Adidas Terex team, and she'll be joining us on the live stream. So.
For those that aren't familiar, we are going to have an absolute crushing team at the live stream this weekend. Myself, Andy Jones-Wilkins, Dylan Bowman, and Corinne Malcolm, the Western States crew is coming into town, and then we've also got the single track guys again, Brett Hornig and Finn Melanson. That's our in-studio crew. And then we've also got Leah Yingling out on course is going to be with Jamil, and who is it that I'm forgetting?
Zach Marion will be Leah and Zach will be leapfrogging, covering the different aid stations with their own film crew. So
it is so much fun too. Yeah. I've done that. The very first year we did a Black Canyon live stream, myself and Rob Ricardo basically just leapfrogged aid stations and then finally we got to the finish line, and that was the year, I can't remember which, it was 2021, yeah. I know that Senseman got second and finished 6 minutes ahead of Nick Curry for that golden ticket. Yeah. We had a blast. But yeah, I hope that you join us for our live stream this weekend.
Time for picks.
Well, actually, I was going to say,
all right.
Are there any other women that we haven't hit upon that you want to?
There's a big one, Hannah Allgood.
Yes.
Hannah Allgood, 2022 San Juan Solstice, first place. Gorge Waterfalls 100K, first place. In 2021, Never Summer 100K, second place. But there's always a but, similar to the but of Georgia never running 100K or Ingvild 30th at CCC, 14th at CCC. Now, CCC stacked.
Yeah, to me, if you finish CCC in the top 50,
but she's got some folks ahead of her. So I'm interested to see how Hannah Allgood does. I know she meticulously prepares, and I think she's probably coming into this. She spent a three-day training camp down here on the course, so she's not going to make any mistakes.
Okay.
I think that covers we haven't talked about Casey. She almost needs no introduction. She did have that fourth place finish at Javelina, was disappointed, was planning to come back and defend, to come here to Black Canyon and earn a golden ticket, and was able to secure a race admin spot at Western States. I have it on good authority. It was well-deserved. It's something that she has worked for.
Oh, for sure.
It's not something that was just dropped on her plate. And what this allows, of course, is Casey to run free this weekend and to come to Western States this year, getting her 9th finish, and then her triumphant 10th finish in the 2024 race. Because for those of you who don't know, one of the nice rules Western States has in place is once you have finished the race 9 times, they let you in automatically. One time, you get one chance. They let you in automatically to get your 10th finish.
Well, and you've known Casey a long time. I mean, I've only met her more recently. Like, actually, I met her at Javelina for the first time. She is as deserving of that as anybody, because she's not only a great runner, she's a huge ambassador for the sport. I mean, she is a bright spot on the trail and ultra running scene. So I think that is absolutely, I have no qualms about that whatsoever. She deserves that as kind of like almost like a career achievement award at this point. The one thing that I wonder about with Casey, and I go back and forth on this, I mean, obviously she had devastating condition that she was like trying to come back from. It was
a major hamstring rupture that she had to have surgically put back together.
And she came back and she had a great run at Javelina, as you mentioned. But like, is Javelina her at 100%, or is like there another gear that we possibly just haven't seen? Like, with her performance at Javelina 100, does that evoke the images of what she was doing when she was winning Western States? Or is there like still some work to do for her to ascend even higher? I guess
I don't think we know for sure. We know that she ran Western States 2022 at, say, 70%.
Yes.
I would say she came to Javelina with the goal of getting a golden ticket. Probably at some point in the race realized it was out of reach. I wouldn't say she downshifted. She never downshifted, but she realized, okay, I've got more work to do. The blessing of the race admin spot came, which was just a little bit before the Western States Lottery in early December. She kept this on her calendar. She has a traditional set of races she does both in her local region, and she always goes to the Memorial Day training camp. I think we're likely to see 2016, 2017 Casey back at Western States this year. Probably the first 100% Casey we've seen since the year after she won.
That would be amazing, because honestly, like, that's something that I've really wrestled with as to whether or not we've seen her, on the comeback trail, if she's truly 100% back.
Yeah.
Like, that's how talented
and
she
nobody,
is.
as someone who experienced the Western States magic more than most, nobody embodies it in the current group of runners more than Casey. Something special happens to her on that course. She'll be the first to admit it. And I have a feeling...
She gets emotional talking about it. When you interviewed her last year, you could hear it in her voice about how much she cares about that race. But that's the way she seems to approach the sport in general. Yeah. Like, she really is running with a grateful appearance because of how much she's gone through to get back to even where she is now.
Yeah.
So, and who knows? Maybe she does have, another, high level, act in her racing career yet. I mean,
to come. You really on the women's side of things, you have to go back to Nikki Kimball, 10, 15 years ago to find an athlete to do. To be in the hunt for the top 10 every year for 10 years. Yeah. Shortly after that, we saw Ian Sharman, who did that, for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Casey's in that caliber. And I mean, she doesn't want to just go off into the sunset. She wants these last 2 Western States to be proud finishes of that race. And then she's going to get that 10-year buckle and hopefully volunteer with me for the rest of her life. Because
that's what you did, right? You got to 10 and you were like, okay, I'm good. Picks?
Let's do picks.
All right, you can go first.
All right, so I'm as much as I love these interesting stories of Ingrid Kaspersen, Keely Henninger, Casey, Eden Nielsen, and Sarah Beal, I'm going with Alexi Pappas in 5th.
Okay.
I think she's learned at Bandera. I think she must have signed up for this race at the last minute because something clicked in her fitness. She's not just going to show up here and get another 12th place. Georgia Porter, I'm going with the Aravaipa team member for 4th. I just think, yes, never run 100K before, but enough knowledge of the desert, with Crown King and McDowell Mountain Frenzy and Black Canyon 60K. I'm going with Georgia. In 3rd, got to go with Hannah Algood with the San Juan Solstice win, the Gorge Waterfalls win. I just think she's not going to line up at the start line unless she's ready to win. Elsa McDonald's going to cruise to second place. She already has declined her spot, and Heather Jackson wins it.
Oh.
And her triathlon friends are going to be all over the chat, and Heather will have that win under her belt and be able to go into Western States knowing that she's got that under her belt, which means if they accept them, Hannah Algood and Georgia Porter are my picks to take the women's golden tickets.
Okay. In my picks, number 5, I've got Keely Henninger. I feel like, she seems to be in a good place right now, and, she's as talented as anybody in this field. That's the thing. When we're talking about our picks, it's not just 5 people. It's like 10. You're almost just kind of, at the mercy of, the fickle nature of this sport in terms of like just getting lucky that, all of your runners, just align that day.
Yeah.
Number 4, I've got Heather Jackson. I'm curious to see how she handles the second half of this race. Obviously, she finished the first 100K at Javelina 100 in, just torching the field, but the last 20 miles of this race are far different than the third loop at Javelina. So we'll see. And this is not like a strike against her. Frankly, if she finishes 4th, I think that more further still reinforces the fact that she belongs to Western States.
Yeah.
Number 3, I've got Georgia Porter. I think that Georgia is, this being her backyard is a stroke in her favor, and I've seen her run, and oh my goodness, like she's just so talented. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is a step up in distance, but it's not a huge step up in distance because she just ran her first 50 miler, last year. So, number 2, Elsa McDonald, she beat Courtney on this course.
Yeah,
that's all I gotta say.
Enough said.
And number 1, I already said this on Twitter. People are sleeping on Ida Nielsen.
Yeah.
Ida beat an Ann Trayson record at Crown King. She has run to success in the desert. She has success at this distance at CCC. I just feel like she's got the talent if she's ready. Now, the word on the street is that her mileage is not where other high-level runners would normally be heading into this race. But then again, we also don't know what she's doing outside of that. She could be doing a lot of cross-training. She could be just saving her legs. I feel like Ida is being slept on by a lot of people. And, having seen – what's funny is that, like, not only did she win the Crown King Scramble the year that she ran it and set the course record, her brother did the exact same thing.
Is that right?
Yeah. They both came in, from abroad and basically just smoked the entire fields on both sides. So, they and Crown King has long had like beat the course record, grab some cash. So they basically, I hope they subsidized their trip by basically just coming in and scooping those course records.
Well, man, those are some great picks and only further indication that you never know what's going to happen.
For sure. Before we head into the men's side, I want to give people a quick heads up. If you've got some questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll do our best to hit as many as we can at the end of the show. We are under a clock, so we're going to be bowing out just before the top of the hour. But let's jump right into the men's side.
All right. Can I start? I've been dying to talk about this.
Yes.
So, to me, the story of the men's race is the Western States dreamers, the Western States hopefuls, the Western States want another crack at it guys.
Yeah.
Okay. In this group, Stephen, a lot of them are local or regional. Stephen Kirsch, Ryan Miller, David Laney, Nick Curry, Tim Frericks, Cole Watson. Those are 6 names. All but Nick Curry have run the race before. Okay. None, I would say, with the possible exception of Stephen Kirsch, I haven't asked him, have achieved to their ability at Western States. And, a 7th, Eric Senseman.
Oh, yes.
Okay. How could I forget Eric Senseman? That's 7 Western States. There's only 2 golden tickets.
Yeah.
But these 7 guys, for all 7 different stories, 6 of them have been there before. the 7th, Nick Curry, has actually qualified to be there before and chosen not to go. He really wants to go this year, to the extent that he's a relatively late entry to this race,
Yeah.
I believe. He was going to be in Javelina, and it was relatively late.
Well, he was going to be at Bandera.
He was going to be at Bandera.
and
Exactly.
late withdrawal.
So the story of those, I mean, Cole Watson had a 14th at Western States. I mean, Stephen Kirsch had a top 10. I mean, Frericks has had, some, a monumental blow up there. Senseman had a good race and then, barely scraped for 24 hours. Laney, I think, had one that he would consider decent and then some definite kind of meltdowns. All 7 of those guys want to get back. Black Canyon is their chance to get back. There's only 2 golden tickets. And that, to me, is a story, the story of the Western States Dreamers.
Well, what's funny is that of those 7 names you mentioned, 4 of them are locals.
Yes.
And 3 of them are cowboys. Like, one of the things that I was looking at is that there's an awful lot of cowboys in this race. For those that have been following the sport for a few years, the Coconino Cowboys are, I guess, a somewhat legendary group of guys. They're not really active or together. I don't know what the deal is. But, I mean, Stephen Kirsch, Tim Frericks, and Eric Senseman have all, experienced, quite a bit of success in this sport. And they trained together in times past. Stephen Kirsch, multiple top 10s at Western States. Tim Frericks has won this race before. And Senseman has, like you said, a top 15 finish at Western States and has also golden ticketed here.
And none of those 3 are afraid to go for it.
No.
And I think this weekend they're going to have to go for it.
Yeah.
So you take those 3, then you take Ryan Miller. Okay, He had a Western States DNF in 2021 that he earned from, I think he earned a golden ticket. Bandera, maybe. Yes.
Yeah.
And wants to avenge that. Hasn't raced much. So, you don't have a lot to go from there. Cole Watson and David Laney.
Cole Watson just missed out on a golden ticket here a couple years ago at Javelina 100. Yeah. He's an excellent talent. So, he's right in that discussion, like you said.
So, like, back in Bandera, we had the Jeff Colt conversation because he was 11th at Western States. So he really wanted that ticket, because 11th is like first loser in Western States. We've got 7 of those here.
Yeah.
And then we got a whole bunch of other names to talk about. But we were talking a little earlier about the magic that she finds when she's on the course. If this is going to be one of those examples where like people are lift-off cars, are strong enough to lift cars when they, when the adrenaline's pumping, one of these guys could be one of those lift-off car guys and just is like, you know what? I had my day. I saw myself getting to Olympic Valley. I saw myself getting to the track, and I just had to have this otherworldly experience. Even if they are, like a couple of these guys been around a long time and maybe a tiny bit past their prime, although I wouldn't say any of them are past their prime in sort of the big picture. But that's going to be a fascinating sort of subplot or main plot as the race unfolds.
Talking about people past their prime, well, the thing is, we saw 2 Masters guys get golden tickets last year here in True Heart Brown and Scott Traer. I mean, we proved that age ain't nothing but a number, and for instance, the Cowboys are all in their early 30s.
Yeah.
Nick is like 33, 34. So, these guys are
and we saw Devin, who's over 40, get a ticket at Javelina.
True, yeah.
On the women's side. So,
I guess maybe there's something about being wiser and more experienced when you get to this race in particular. 3 names that I was looking at when I was trying to make my picks that are all on a quick turnaround from Bandera. You've got J.P. Giblin, who was second, did get his golden ticket. Canyon Woodward and Brian Curl, who finished 3rd and 7th respectively. What are your thoughts on those 3?
Canyon Woodward. I just think because his name is Canyon, he should win. Because last year a guy named Trueheart won. Now, I'm kidding. All joking aside, he came back from the dead at Bandera.
Yeah.
You don't often see a guy front run, get caught, get past, and then he scrapes and claws back for a 3rd place finish. I think, too, he's got downhill legs. Which, as you noted in your course description,
very strong here.
He's going to be smart. He knows how to close, And this field, the way it's, mile 50, after mile 50, there could still be a lot of jockeying. I think of the group you just mentioned there, of the Bandera bounce backers, I think Canyon Woodward's probably the most likely Bandera bounce backer on the men's side. Since I picked Alexi Pappas fifth, she's a Bandera bounce backer on the women's side.
Yeah.
Nothing against Brian or JP. I think JP might be here for a training run.
Sure.
Running in a little bit of heat, running in some competition. Maybe he was signed up already and he just figured I'll come. And
That too. Yeah.
So
is that the Mako thought? Like,
Right.
Where you basically just register for every golden ticket race?
Register for all of them and race the ones you want to.
Yeah. We've also got a couple of interesting stories in terms of what I call the crossovers. John Ranieri and Ryan Raff. How do you handicap guys that you're literally trying to translate in some ways a different sport? I mean, you've got, for those that aren't familiar, John Ranieri is a 2:12 marathoner.
Yep, ran a 2:12 just in December at CIM.
And Ryan Raff is an NCAA Nationals cross-country level runner. I mean,
is recently out of NAU, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to do. I mean, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
We'll just see.
How do you look at runners that are obviously so talented, but not knowing what they're going to do in this kind of format? I mean, we've encountered that in some races before. We encountered it with Alexi, at Bandera.
At Bandera, yeah.
So, but with these guys, like, I know even less. Like, Alexi's got a Wikipedia page.
Right. Well, I mean, at the risk of being caustic, the trail is littered with the remains of 2:12 marathoners. But of course, not all 2:12 marathoners are created equal. And
True.
whether you can make that, Peterman was a phenomenal college athlete, made the transition relatively quickly from 50K to 50 mile to 100K to 100 mile. So I think the proof will be in the pudding. I'm really interested in seeing how Ranieri and Raff do. And Raff is also an Aravaipa team member, Aravaipa racing team, right?
Yeah, there's several Aravaipa racing team members out there on the course this weekend.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. So I really don't. I have to say, and we're going to get to our picks in a second, I don't have either of those guys in my top 5, but I wouldn't be surprised if either of them end up in the top 5.
Same. Yeah, I wouldn't. I didn't have either of them in my top 5. One more subset of competitors that I was looking at as we're heading in, the international runners.
Yes.
Tom Evans. Was it Janosch
Kowalczyk.
Kowalczyk?
Yeah.
And Jacob Puzzi. Jacob has had experience out here. Finished 6th at Haviland 100 a couple years ago. Tom Evans is Tom Evans. I mean, you've got a sub 15 at Western States. You are in the discussion, but Tom also already has a ticket.
Yes.
And also Janosch Kowalczyk first at the Mozart 100K UTMB race. What are your thoughts on those 3?
So I'm intrigued for sure. Jacob seems to be resurgent. He ran those first 3 laps of Javelina, on fire.
Yes.
Faded a little bit, ended up dropping out, but he lives in Canada most of the time, but part-time resident in Flagstaff and in this area, has trained a fair bit on the Black Canyon course, I've noticed on Strava over the last couple of months, so can't count him out. Janosch Kowalczyk, I was not familiar with. I did my research, saw he got a 6th 2 years ago at CCC. The Mozart course is a beast. He's, I think, also here with the Adidas Terex.
That makes sense.
But I don't know that for sure. And then Tom Evans. 3rd at UTMB, maybe the best 3rd place ever at UTMB. 2nd at Western States. He has wins at Tarawera and CCC, going back 5, 6, 7 years. He's a hard guy to bet against.
You want to jump right into our picks?
I do.
All right. I'll go first this time for the men's side.
Okay.
In 5th place, it's totally like with the heart here. I'm picking Nick Curry. I feel like Nick is going to be in another situation where when he gets to Black Canyon City, he's going to be like in 10th, and then he's going to reel in as many people as he can. I just don't know if he's got that ability to reel in everybody. I mean, he's undeniably fast, but he's also so committed to the way he runs, and he doesn't step outside of his box. At least he hasn't. Now he could shock us all and do something completely different, but that's how I feel about Nick's chances. Number 4, I've got Stephen Kirsch. In this case, for me, it was pick a cowboy. I didn't know which cowboy. Like I feel like maybe two of them will have a good day, one better than the other, and the other one it's just not going to be their day. But like I don't know if and at this point, Kirsch I believe is the most talented of the three, and that's not a strike against the other two because they're all awesome. Number 3, I've got Cole Watson. Cole's had success out here in at Javelina, and I feel like he got the taste of it at Western States, through a sponsorship spot a couple of years ago, and he wants it back. Number 2, I've got Tom Evans. If Tom didn't have the ticket, I have him number 1 with a bullet. But I think he also doesn't have to win this race. I think he still, is, very close and in the discussion. And number 1, I've got David Laney. I watched David Laney run a 12:3500. He is so fast. He is so talented, and he wants that ticket. So I feel like Laney, Evans, and Watson, the ticket passes down from Evans, and so David Laney and Cole Watson, I think, get your golden tickets from me.
I love it. I love it. Well, you've got 3 of the dreamers in your top 5, right? With Curry, Watson, and Laney.
It's the day of the dreamer.
It's the day of the dreamer. I went with my heart, too, on number 5. Different. I mean, I love Nick Curry. You know that. But I went with Ryan Miller. That DNF in 2021 was so disappointing. He's a Texan. He has a Bandera win under his belt. He has been able to train all winter. I'm going with Ryan Miller, number 5. I'm going with a Cowboy, too, in number 4, and that's Stephen Kirsch. So we've got him in the same slot, probably for the same reason. Hasn't raced a ton.
Yeah.
Has good results. So he's my first dreamer. I'm going with Canyon Woodward third.
Oh.
So of that Bandera bounce backers, I think Canyon is going to bounce back, and he's going to get that third slot. I've got Laney slipping into second.
Okay.
So he's my second of 3 dreamers. I think he's a gamer. I think he wants at least one more crack at Western States. He's smart. He is not going to be sucked into an overly fast pace. He's not going to make any mistakes.
Yeah.
So I've got Laney second, and I've got Evans winning. Yeah. I hear you on the... He has a ticket already. Maybe he won't have as much of a motivation. But, man, winning Black Canyon, 4+ months before Western States has got to, he's going to be in the minds of some of those other front runners at Western States. And, it's been a while since we've had an international runner win Western States.
Yeah.
On the men's side. Plenty on the women's side.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I think Tom is going to win this thing.
Yeah, I don't have any fault with that whatsoever. I honestly believe that that in this race, Tom Evans is probably the most talented runner on the male side. And when he gets to Western States, assuming he's healthy, he is going to be a very popular pick for the top 3.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he is just that talented. I mean, he's, anytime you run sub 15 at Western States, you're automatically in the discussion for the favorites at that race.
Yeah.
So those are our picks. We've got a couple other stories that we'd like to touch upon. And again, one more time, if you've got questions that you would like us to touch upon, throw them in the chat and we'll hit as many as we can. But we've each got like a kind of an interest story. And mine is Mike Melchior's. Mike is a Prescott runner locally, and he is the only individual in this race who has run the race every year, run the 100K, and finished it. Now, last year, he came very close to not finishing it. He finished it in 19 hours, 56 minutes, give or take. So he finished with 4 minutes to spare, but he is a perfect 9 for 9. He is bib number 10 this year because he's going for his 10th finish. An honorable mention to his buddy Dean Hansen, who he trains with and runs with, because Dean has finished 8 times, and the only time he missed was basically like they had to reattach his hip or something like that. So, props to Mike and to Dean for running this race. Who's your?
I've got a
special
special interest story for Dana Baxley out of Lexington, Kentucky. Dana is a PhD executive with the Nature Conservancy. Spends a ton of time underground cleaning up old and decrepit mines in Appalachia. And in the 2022 Western States, she got in with a raffle ticket, ran the race, and got timed out 200 yards below Roby Point. For those of you keeping score at home, that's about mile 98.5 8.8. She missed the cutoff at Roby Point, which is where you enter the road and wind your way through Auburn. She came to Javelina and ran a 25-hour Javelina, hoping to get picked in the lottery. Didn't get picked in the lottery, and is coming out here, has trained through the winter in Kentucky. Just that she has the Western States fever. And for all the right reasons. I will never forget the look on her face when the truck brought her back to the track and she was dropped off and the crowd came around her and having missed that cutoff by such a small amount. So it's a story because she's going to, like a lot of folks who are going to, toil in obscurity going after that sub-17 number. Hopefully we'll be able to celebrate some of them in our late night broadcast up at the finish line. But Dana is one of the many who are making the trip out here to Arizona so that they can check that box again, get that Western States qualifier, and get themselves in the lottery again for the 2024 race. So I can't wait to see how Dana does, and I can't wait to see how all of those who are chasing those Western States qualifiers do this weekend at Black Canyon.
I guess Tom Evans is actually joining us with us in the chat right now.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's excited to be here. Tom, we're excited to see you run out here.
That's right.
Can't wait
Good.
for this
Thanks
weekend.
for jumping in on the chat.
Bryce, do we have any questions before we call it a show?
We certainly do. Let me get back to the top of the chat here.
Sure.
Will the first person to Black Canyon City take the win, or are we going to have racing in the back half?
Oh, I think that we're going to have racing in the back.
I think we're going to have racing in the back half.
I know that I believe that Liam Tryon, Aid Station Fireball, for those that you follow on social media, he actually broke it down that for the most part, like, things stay pretty static after Black Canyon City. But I think it's too hard to predict that because, this is a race that too many runners, like, while he might have seen that, I've also seen the lead dogs, like, come into Black Canyon City or into Table Mesa and just call it there.
Yeah.
Like, with 10 miles to go, they're just like, I can't sustain.
Well, two noteworthy examples from recent years. Brittany Peterson coming from behind past Lisa Roberts in her course record year, and then Scott Traer.
Yeah, a
a notorious come from behind runner to nab his ticket last year. So I think you're likely to see some racing from Black Canyon City, with the possible exception of Heather Jackson. If she pulls a flyer and she goes and she keeps the hammer down, she might have it in the bag by Black Canyon City.
All right, and then we got time for one more from Buckeye Jen, who asks, what is the weather forecast for race day, and how do you think it'll impact the runners?
That's all you, Chris.
From what I saw, I believe that the race forecast is going to be pretty mild, like in the highs in the upper 60s at Black Canyon City. It doesn't sound like the water levels are of any concern. We're not going to be swept away or any course reroutes or anything. I mean, I've been out there when course reroutes have had to happen, and it gets bonkers. I've been out there when, you're trudging through 6 inches of water or 3 inches of mud or both. I've been, out there in, scorching, conditions, which, maybe 75, 80 degrees where, it does get to be 110 here sometimes. But that desert heat with the sun just hits different here. Yeah. And you've got to be conditioned for it. So even in the upper 60s, you could find some people unintentionally cooking if they've gone out too hard in the first half. That's why I think that the Black Canyon or the Bumblebee, bellwether is not necessarily indicative of who's going to.
And if I could jump in, for those Western States qualifier chasers, right, where we're talking about a midnight, 1 a.m. finish, depending on which start they have, they will need to be bundling up a little bit for that last 10, 15 miles. That second night cold as you slow down, it's going to be in the upper 30s.
Yeah.
You need to be ready for that.
All right. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us. For Andy Jones-Wilkins, I'm Chris Worden. Be sure to join us this weekend as we do the live stream of the Black Canyon 100K. We will be streaming through the men's and women's podiums for the 100K on Saturday, and then we'll have we'll go quiet, and then at 11 p.m., AJW and I are going to jump back on for a couple hours simply to congratulate and support those runners that are sliding in just under that 17-hour mark to get their ticket punched to the Western States Lottery this December.
Exactly. The Western States Qualifier Golden Hour.
Absolutely.
Black Canyon style.
If you have any questions on what that feels like, just hit me up and I'll tell you all about it, as I've made it my annual thing. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you this Saturday on right here on the YouTube channel.